Welcome to All Angles, a college admissions podcast by Comet, the podcast that helps you crack the code to college admissions and make informed decisions about your future. With our unique approach of exploring all angles, we delve deep into the complex and multifaceted world of college. Our podcast features expert advice, real-world collegiate experiences, and valuable tips and strategies to help you not only get into the college of your choice, but also succeed socially, academically, and professionally. Join us for straight talk interviews with admissions experts, hiring managers, and discussions with other college students on a wide range of topics related to their social and academic experience. On today's episode, we'll be sharing the importance of a well-crafted personal statement in college applications and how you can begin to attain that. I'd also like to introduce our guest speaker for today, Elton Lin, who's the co-founder of Comet and an expert on college admissions and essay writing. Elton, would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Shania, for having me on again. Appreciate it. My name is Elton Lin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Comet. I'm also the CEO and founder of Illumin Education, which is a private college counseling firm based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've been doing private counseling for the better part of 12 years and have seen tons of students, have helped students gain admission into every top 50 university, including every Ivy League, and have read tons of essays. I mean, thousands of essays. Let's talk about essays, Shania. Let's do it.
Awesome. So for those of our viewers that are listening and they might not even entirely understand what a personal statement is, can you provide a little bit of an overview of kind of what it is and the significance that it holds in the college admissions process?
Absolutely. Yeah, on the college application, there are different elements. One of those, some of those elements being your academic profile, like your GPA, test scores, if you submit them. There is a basic activities list or a resume that is included on your college application, but there is no area where students can really sort of communicate a more personal message or a story. I would say, like, in lieu of an interview, like most schools don't do an interview. So in lieu of an interview, where can the school really get to hear your story, get to hear parts about you that are not included on your resume? And this is the place. This is a personal statement. In most cases, it's anywhere between 500 to 650 words. And you literally can tell a story about yourself. And what do you want to tell admissions officers to make sure that your story is complete? And this is where it's going to be at.
Okay, yes. And so there's definitely quite a bit of different prompts for the personal statement. And of course, we can get into more detail later, but just to kind of provide a bit of guidance, there's so many different prompts to choose from. And people might struggle with figuring out whether they want to highlight, a different part of themselves, whether that's the challenges they faced or something interesting that we might not know just seeing their resume or transcript. So how should people in general even approach the process of selecting a prompt? Should they, ask ChatGPT? Should they just do eeny, meeny, miny, mo and pick one? Write an essay for every single prompt and then pick the best one? What would you advise?
Yeah, I actually wouldn't begin with the prompt. The Common App has a number of prompts that you can use, but I actually would not begin with the prompt. I would begin with your own story, and I would just brainstorm moments in your life that have been important to your growth. And these could be big moments where you had to encounter big challenges, or they could be small moments where you just discovered something new or realized something important about yourself. So the important thing is to find moments that really reflect your growth and reflect your values, and focus in on those stories, then find a prompt that matches that story. That's what I think is most important. Tell your most important story. Don't pick the best prompt. That's less important.
Okay, definitely. Telling your story and then figuring out which prompt can match that sounds good. And starting into like brainstorming ideas now that people have that idea of, okay, I need to kind of figure out the most important story to me or something that really shows like admissions officers and people that are reading my essay that I am ready for college and I am passionate about what I want to study. Brainstorming can be kind of hard to figure out what is even maybe interesting about you or what you want to feature to the college admissions officer. So what do you think you would kind of advise to people in terms of timeline? Should people start brainstorming like right now over the summer or wait until the idea kind of comes to them?
Don't wait until the idea comes to them. I think that's the easy response. But yeah, I always advise seniors that I'm working with to start right at the beginning of the summer and give yourself a ton of time, a ton of on-ramp to be able to really find your story. And I would say among all the students that I've worked with, 60% changed their topic. Like you start with a topic in June and then you start writing that story and you feel like it has something and you begin after like 3 or 4 drafts to realize that I don't quite have enough detail or I didn't quite think the story went to where I thought it was going to go. And you really have to change topics. And so give yourself time to pivot, to change stories, to try different stories out, and then pick the one that you want. So you need to start early in June. Don't wait till October, please. For the please. I'm begging you.
We're begging you here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I can agree with that. I remember when I first started writing my essay for my personal statement, after like the second draft, I realized I didn't really like it and that I didn't feel like it was something I wanted to turn in. But then it took me like kind of a week to like go through the stages of grief and just accept that all that writing I had done, all that time I had spent wasn't necessarily going to be used. So starting early makes sense, but I do assume there will be at least a couple of people listening to this podcast in October. So I would like to also ask you, just on behalf of them, if you are happening to start late in the, essay process, what are some, quick advices or things that people can do to just kind of quickly start to brainstorm ideas and get started on that essay, assuming they're on a time crunch?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are different brainstorming tools. I actually do like a lot of college essay guys. So if you go onto the web and search college essay guy, I like his brainstorming tools. I really like his objects brainstorming tool the best, which is where you just identify objects in your life that have meaning to you, and you just go through his questions, and you end up brainstorming like maybe like 12 or 13, 14, 15 different objects that are important to you. So whether that object is, like your teddy bear or your first folder you have from school or whatever it might be, and then you tell a story around the important object. And what that does is that it allows you to really think about why it's important to you. And if you are able to articulate why it's important to you, invariably it reflects your values and what you find as important. So whether the teddy bear is connected to a gift that you got from a family member, and that relationship with that family member is very important and is something that reflects a mentoring type relationship, and you learn a lot from that, then that is what gets communicated. I like college essay guys, brainstorming tools, but I always one maybe tip is don't try to tell like an entire storyline. Try to find the smallest moment and try to mine the details of that smallest moment. Oftentimes when I'm reading an essay and I feel like I'm reading like 17 years of timeline from when I was born to like seventh grade, lunchtime, like aloneness, and then, 11th grade, it's too much. I'd focus it on a small moment and just get into the details and then bring the story to life. That's maybe some quick tips. Let me ask you, Shania, how did you brainstorm your story ideas?
Um, I started in the summertime, which was definitely helpful in the sense that I really like took my time to think through the ideas I liked. I think I, came up with some of the things about myself that I felt like I wanted to highlight or feature. For example, like I wanted to talk about the nonprofit I had started, talk about one of my challenge being like my mom's cancer. So I think I already had in mind a few ideas, and then I also turned to some of my friends and family to kind of ask them if they had ideas or what they thought about me that I should highlight. So I think that also helped me. My mom and one of my friends gave me some good ideas to kind of get started with. So I think that's also one way to turn to getting ideas. Maybe is asking people that are close to you or know a lot about you and see kind of from their perspective, like what do they find interesting or cool about you.
Good tips. I like it.
Okay, great. I'm glad that's useful. So one other question I had for you is obviously, going into your essay, it I've heard that it can be important to have unique or personal stories. I've seen like a lot of advices online that say like don't go for cliche topics, or talk about sports because everyone likes to talk about sports, or learning an instrument. So what advice do you personally have about that? For me, I'm not like musically inclined, nor can I play any sports. So it was kind of out of question for me. But I do wonder, for people that, are well versed in those things, what would you suggest? Should they like be aiming for something unique, or, is there anything that actually is a cliche topic?
Yeah, there are definitely like cliche topics, but I always feel like students really need to begin with a story that's still most meaningful for them. So you need to kind of be yourself first, right? So I mean, no matter, I mean, maybe that basketball story really is the most pivotal moment of your life, and that's totally fine, actually. So just tell your story, try to tell your story maybe in a different way, and not just the kind of like you know, basketball was hard, but then I played the most important game, and then I shot the game-winning shot, and then I won, and it was a turning point for me. You know, which is still a good story, but it is a very common like pathway to tell that story. Maybe tell that story in a different way, and talk about a practice moment, or talk about talk about like a person, and why that person was important to your development, and what you learned from that, and how you carry that value all the way through. Regardless, maybe you can find a different way to tell that story, and but stick with who you are. I feel like if the school really doesn't want you because like of a story that you're telling, then it's probably not a school you want to go to. So I think like be you first. But certainly if you have 3 or 4 good story options, then perhaps skipping the classic service trip, or skipping the sports story, or skipping the piano accomplishment or something like that probably would be better.
Okay. So would you kind of say that those are maybe common cliches in personal statement essays, just going off of your experience in reading people's essays and helping them kind of craft it so that it's well read by colleges? Are those topics you feel like you see often, or do you have any other interesting ones you're able to share?
I mean, those topics we see often in early drafts, and sometimes we try to work with students to brainstorm other ideas. And if they have it, we'll go with other ideas. If they really don't have it, then we'll see how we can deliver that story in a more unique way. And I think but yeah, those are some cliche topics. That's for sure. Yeah.
Okay, if they're insistent on talking about the piano, you'll find a way to make that piano as interesting as possible. Got
Yeah, we'll do our
it.
best. Yeah.
And do you have any examples of really compelling personal stories, or really unique ones that you've read that have made an impact on college apps?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do have one where I have a student who, a computer science student, and we're in the San Francisco Bay Area, so we get a lot of those.
Right.
You may know, Shana.
I am one
Um,
of those.
so yeah, you're one of those. She's for crying out loud. So no, but we were working on some early drafts of his essay, and then one of his stories he was trying to work on was like he does he's a computing Olympiad, like computing Olympiad person. So he competes in computing Olympiad, and then he does all his training like from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. And so we were kind of talking about like the journey is 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. And it was just we were doing like 5 or 6 drafts of this, and it was just kind of boring and not interesting. And we just, we kept going to other of his computer science exploits. And then finally, like after 3 months of storyboarding, like in September, he was talking about, yeah, like I have to go and like I have to go like practice with my younger brother, and like practice with him for his theater performance. And I'm like, what are you doing? And then he says, yeah, like my parents divorced, my dad isn't around, my mom is working, and like my younger brother is like into musical theater, and so I have to like practice lines with him after school, and I have to sing those lines with him too. And he's like, I'm no singer, come on. And I'm like, really, this is fascinating. So we ended up he ended up writing the story about how he spends his afternoons like singing, poorly singing musical theater lines back to his brother just to help him perform. But it's become such an exciting part of his day because like he's just excited to see his younger brother like really perform well and make it in musical theater. And you know, he talked a little bit about how he's sort of been a surrogate father figure for him, and that he's just been his biggest fan, and like he sees his growth in a way that he probably would not have seen if his father was around. And that was sort of a big thesis for his essay. And I do want to say that like he was admitted to Harvard and MIT. I mean, certainly he had good academic credentials, but it was a very like personal story in the midst of a lot of like academic achievements. And I think, and I have other students who have equally, if not more, academic achievements who did not get into Harvard and MIT. And so this is where I think his essay was very winsome and human in the process.
Yeah, so there you have it, everyone. If you are a poor singer, you can still get into words. That is one of
There
our
you have it.
there you have it. Yeah, so kind of going off of that quickly, it kind of also makes me question one thing, which is that I've heard that sometimes a good essay can maybe make up for a poor transcript. So of course, there's a lot of different takes on that. And, you know, ideally, you should be having well-written, interesting essays paired with a strong you know, extracurricular list or academic transcript. But what would you say for people that maybe don't have the strongest grades? Do you think that they also can, you know, stand a chance with top colleges or maybe more competitive colleges just from having a strong essay? Would you advise people over the summer to focus on a good essay, or maybe spend some time on the essay, but also maybe some time on summer classes to fix their transcript?
Yeah, the easy answer is no. The essay doesn't compensate for a poor academic profile, or an academic profile that doesn't match the school that you're targeting. And that poor academic profile is depends on the context, right? So I think, like, no, I think the essay really is there to really lend a more personal picture of the student, and to really help the admission reviewer like get color on who the student is, as opposed to what's being written in black and white on the application. So no, I think if you're targeting a particular school, first and foremost is to make sure that your academic profile is in line. And so if you need to make sure that you need to replace D or an F on your transcript, make sure you do that over the summer. If you're, you know, maybe you have too many B's or maybe a C in there, maybe taking a community college class over the summer before your senior year in order to add another A to your overall profile to communicate to colleges that you can handle a college level workload. Remember, the most important question that admissions officers are asking is always still, will this student survive? Will the students not drop out once they arrive? And the only place, they're not getting that from your essay, they're getting that from your academic profile, from your transcript. So make sure that is like in the ballpark for where you're applying. And then once you're there, then your essay has a little bit more legs to do its work. And so make sure your academics is there first. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that's a good thing to keep in mind for people, especially if they are working to fix up their transcript over the summer. So balancing your time on your essays and also on adding in some more A's or some good grades there. So you kind of mentioned that colleges want to see effectively that you can handle college, right? You want to be prepared and are academically and socially ready to go to college and learn and kind of build something for yourself. So what would you say, how can people portray their personal growth or resilience in their personal statements? You know, any like generic advice maybe for people that want to show that they are prepared for college and ready to take on, you know, what can happen in university?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the I'm ready to take on university is maybe most pronounced in your transcript, right? So like saying something in your essay and getting a C and you know, a C in calculus AB when you're going into engineering is like, you know, not the story doesn't match up, right? So, but I do feel like you know, there are supplemental essays And invariably, many of these supplemental essays will have a why do you want to study this particular major? And they do want to see some clarity in, let's just say it's engineering. Have you done enough? I mean, have you sort of expressed enough interest in over the course of your high school years in engineering as it relates to getting involved in different activities, whether you're a part of a robotics team, whether you're part of like engineering club, whether you submitted an engineering science fair project. Like, have you done enough activities outside of class to demonstrate your genuine interest in engineering, or whatever major it might be? And so really communicating the breadth of your academic pursuits outside of class in that essay can also make your story more clear as it relates to wanting to study a particular major in college. And so I think there are for many of the top schools, you're going to be ended up submitting your personal statement and then submitting, maybe up to 2 or even 3 additional supplemental essays. And those supplemental essays will be an opportunity for you to flex your involvement and commitment and even breadth of achievement in, whether it's computing Olympiad or maybe it's speech and debate or Model UN, whatever the case may be. It will allow you to flex some of that ability and share some of the story behind it.
Yeah, definitely. And with challenges, people might also have some sort of like, information that can be potentially maybe traumatic or just negative information that they want to share, or has tied into who they've become and how they've maybe overcome that or grown from it. But what would you say are some strategies for kind of discussing those challenges without maybe dwelling on the negative? I know that when I was writing my essays, a lot of people told me like, oh, you want to focus less on the challenge and more what you learned from it. But is there kind of a rule with like, this is appropriate information to share with them, or you can share everything, like to really give them the full picture of what was going on in your life at that time? What would you say like are the boundaries, if there are any?
The boundaries are hard. Like it's hard to kind of discuss like very, very specific boundaries,
Mhm.
but I would agree that students should really focus in on what they've learned from the event and less so about the event. I have read some essays this past couple seasons where I really felt like it was probably a little bit arguably maybe too graphic, and to the degree where I was worried about the student's safety. And this is where I think if it and this is where, let me qualify that statement by also saying that if your safety is in jeopardy, I think there are more important things than writing this college essay and figuring out which colleges to apply to. And let me communicate to you to really speak with your high school counselor. If you don't have anybody to speak with, your teachers, a trusted mentor. I say all this because I feel like I've read some essays over the course of the last, even 3 or 4 years that I had some concerns. And assuming that like you're not in a dangerous place or your safety is not in jeopardy, I think oftentimes like what ends up happening is that like if it gets too like specific into the trauma, then it becomes actually distracting for the reader. And the reader ends up focusing on like they're more worried about you and also maybe on some sense maybe wondering whether you're ready to start college. And I think maybe I don't necessarily feel like you need to like avoid the topic, but I would agree that like really giving the reader a quick glimpse of what's happening, but really talk about your growth and how you're going to carry those values on to wherever you might be going. And if those values are good, then they can see that trauma being a way to help you grow and help you be a contributing member of their student community.
Yeah, okay, that's definitely insightful. I'm glad I formatted it correctly and kind of talked about how I grew from it. It would have been sad to hear a year later that I handled it the wrong way. But I hope that other people find that helpful too, where you definitely like have that freedom to share the challenges or what happened, but also just being mindful and including a lot about how you've overcome it and kind of grown from it, and we'll take that into college.
Mhm.
So now kind of, going on to just creating the essays. And I think I have a lot of questions for you there because, of course, you have kind of started to brainstorm and maybe come up with one or two topics you like and are starting to write about that. I think one question a lot of people have, or an idea people are thinking about, might be using ChatGPT to craft the essay. So, you have your idea ready and you kind of like plug in your prompt into ChatGPT and tell it to come up with a couple of drafts for you about the same, a couple of different versions. How would you feel about people doing that? Do you think that is a useful way to kind of use your time? Do you think it's probably not a good idea because it doesn't channel your voice as much? What would what would you advise people?
So we're gonna share some sort of like hot takes or share some like what is happening on the landscape as of right now. It's early June of 2023. So I'm gonna show you some stuff that I think is important for students to know as it relates to how colleges are handling ChatGPT. So right now, and I was just recently at a like a college counseling conference like 3 weeks ago, where Georgia Tech and Caltech admissions directors were speaking, and the overwhelming, and I'll share with you very guys directly. The overwhelming tenor is that schools are not sure what they're going to do with it as of today, and so they're not sure what policies they're going to develop. There are some schools that are totally fine with students using ChatGPT, and there are schools that are not fine with students using ChatGPT. And so, like some discussed solutions for some universities is that like some universities may even like come up with a supplemental prompt that even asks you to use ChatGPT, and then for you to really understand like how did you prompt engineer your way to come up with a particular answer. And then there's going to be other schools we surmise that may have a checkbox in a supplement that says check here if you use ChatGPT, and maybe they're not so much in favor of using ChatGPT, or check here to commit that you didn't use ChatGPT, right? So right now, I think I say all of that to say that they're thinking about it, but nobody has come up with a unifying approach to how to deal with it. With that all being said, and I'll say this also, if you just use ChatGPT to generate your essay, it's going to generate a very medium essay. And it's because ChatGPT is pulling the content that's on the internet and doing sort of like an algorithmic average on the best next sequence of words that are going to come up on your essay. So you're going to come up with a very medium grade essay. And if you want a very medium grade essay, then fair enough, right? But it's likely not going to be a net positive for your college application if you're just going with a ChatGPT essay. I've done it. I've submitted my own prompts in there with all my own information, and I've seen the output. Even on ChatGPT 4, it's not outstanding. So with that being said, let me maybe you might use ChatGPT to generate an early draft. I'm actually personally not against that, but you're gonna really need to come back and still do what we've talked about, which is brainstorm topics, really figure out the details, really determine whether you can communicate your values clearly, and if you want a more unique delivery, I would surmise that you can't use ChatGPT. So all that being said, I'll throw that out first, and then Shania, let me know where you want to go with it.
Yeah, no, I like that. It kind of reminds me, I actually had someone email me, like a intern for comment email me, and it was very clearly ChatGPT. Like effectively, like one of our interns couldn't show up for one of the meetings. They sent me a 4-paragraph email about, like it was the same thing over and over again. You could, very clearly tell that it was AI generated, because what ChatGPT will do, like, and it can do this on your essays too, is it'll kind of like take the same topic or idea and start to reuse it and just keep wording it differently. You can like get it caught stuck in a loop. So, and obviously it can give like false information too. If you ask ChatGPT to like do the opposite letters of like lollipop, it cannot do that, at least as of today. I don't know if they'll,
Really?
yeah. So I don't know if they'll change that in the next version. But I think that's one important thing to keep into mind when you are kind of relying on the AI to even draft the first letter for you. But sorry, yeah, I do think that that is, it might be helpful if you're kind of prompting it the right way and using it just to get more ideas or see if there's any parts of that you like, and then still adding in your own touch. Another question I had, and I've always kind of wondered about this even when I was applying, but I could never really find any information on it, is how do you think an admission officer's mood plays into reading my essay? Do you think that if they are having a rough day, they read my essay, do you think like that bias can kind of, play into the role of like, oh, I spilled coffee on myself and I'm reading this essay, from Shania. I don't like it. Like, I don't want her here. She's talking about coffee. Like, I spilled coffee today. Do you think that that actually matters? Or do you think that, typically that's not something like you take into account or worry about at any point in the admissions process?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes and no. Let's just say, on a given day, an admission reader reads, and also there's different layers. There's maybe an initial read, and then that app gets passed on to a committee read. It also depends on which school. So if it's a large public school, it's more maybe. So but if you're like, say, trying to get through like, say, 200 applications in a day, which can happen depending on which school, then certainly like if you're being read at 10 a.m. as opposed to 10 p.m., then you might be in trouble, right? But here's the thing. More and more schools are employing a read in pairs part of the process. So what it is that they're getting two people to read the application together in order to reduce bias and to really make sure that it is a more consistent read on every application. And so at the very least, like if one person is like super exhausted, the other person can still kind of come in and be the voice of reason, or vice versa. Maybe if both people are reading at 1 a.m., which actually, if I don't think actually happens. Like I think there are some like set times they're reading together. They're trying to get through as many apps with each other. So there is some built-in ways that schools are using to kind of try to reduce error, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's reassuring to hear. I know some colleges like send you an email, maybe not specifically when your exact application has started to get reviewed, but they kind of give you an idea. Like they'll send you an email like, we've started to review your application, like thank you for your patience. I think UC Berkeley sends one out, or
Really?
I think so. It's one of the two, and they send an email that was like, oh, we've started to review your application. And I remember like for the next week I would like pray when I woke up and went to bed. I was like, I really hope really hope my reader likes this. I think it's definitely reassuring to hear that maybe there's multiple people reviewing it, or there's like a set time and way to make sure they're not biased when going through it. So just kind of back to like crafting essays once people have their ideas, do you think that it is important to talk about your major or maybe what you're studying? Or is there any hard and fast rule with, okay, you should try to talk about something other than, school and what's on your resume, because this is a chance to share something that the readers haven't seen before? Or, if you're really passionate about your major, everything you've done has led up to just you wanting to study that major. Should you talk about that instead? Do you have any like advice on how people should approach that?
Yeah, I think this one's you definitely need to talk about your major somewhere. So if you're applying to a school that has maybe 2 or 3 supplemental essays, then invariably like there's gonna be some space in one of the essays. Perhaps you might consider talking about it in your personal statement, which is fine as long as it's part of, like, again, it's part of your personal growth. I wouldn't launch into a hyper like computer science essay in your personal statement, because I feel like you may lose the opportunity to tell a more personal story, i.e. helping your little brother with musical theater. And then whereas that the supplemental essays may come back and ask for why your major anyways. So I think you should try to include some major related content in one of your essays to really communicate to your reader that you are ready for whatever major you're intending to declare. So I think that's probably the quickest, easiest answer to that. Yeah.
Awesome. And what would you maybe advise to people that, this is assuming that they are listening to this over the summer, maybe they are undeclared or they don't have a clear set of classes or activities that they want to mention. So I know that a lot of the personal statement is really talking about who you are and maybe what you're passionate about or what you want to study or something you want to share. But what if people feel like they don't have that to share? What would you kind of advise them to do now? Should they just, kind of like be upfront that I don't know what I want to do. I do know I want to go to college, but I don't know why. I'm not sure where. Or would you say like maybe over summer, try to, pick up some sort of activity you can mention? How should people approach that now, like at this point in, application season?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's actually like no worries about going undeclared. And the reality is that should you like need to decide your life today? I mean, come on. I mean, everybody should be given really some time to kind of figure out what's the best fit for them, and that's totally fine. You'll get some different opinions on like, there's some people who really think like you should declare a major no matter what. I think you should just be honest with yourself, and if going undeclared is the most honest thing, I think it's fine. However, like on an undeclared essay, they still want students to take the initiative, to be curious. And so like I think one of the best undeclared essays I've ever read was like a student who talked about they're building a go-kart in their garage, and they're exploring like social political dynamics in Eastern Europe with Model UN, and they're like teaching French to little kids who are wanting to learn French. And like they're talking about all the things that they do with their curiosities and how they find everything that they're doing fascinating. And they can't imagine going into school like settling on just one thing. And what it is like, I'm here to learn. Like I'm here to go in and take my divergent curiosities to the max and then and live them to the best of my ability and then decide when it's time to decide. And so you still get a glimpse of a student's really energy and curiosity and their take the initiativeness in their academic pursuits. But they're communicating that like I'm not ready to decide yet, but I'm gonna pursue it with all my might. That's a compelling undeclared essay. So
I definitely love that. I think that's a great idea. And just to kind of wrap this up, I think for students that are listening, whether this is in June when you're about to start brainstorming and drafting essays, or if you're listening to this, hopefully not in October, but if you are and you have, maybe just a couple of days or like just a few weeks remaining to kind of get started on brainstorming and drafting essays, Elton, what would you say are the 3 tips or steps you would give to people, maybe in no particular order, for things that they should be taking into account or considering when they are brainstorming and drafting?
yeah, I wouldn't try to get like advice from like 20 different people, because I think 20 different people is going to confuse the heck out of you, and I think it's gonna be hard. But yeah, find 1 or 2 people that you really trust, who really know you, and have them read your essay very, very plainly, and what's the most pronounced message they get from your essay. And that's normally what's going to come through. In that sense, also, one tip that I really like is read your own essay out loud to somebody. And that sounds kind of unnerving, but what it does is that once you hear your own words out loud, you actually begin to identify phrases that don't sound quite or don't work quite as well. And you have a sort of a fresh like audio sort of reception of your essay that you don't get by just having it all kind of sit in your head. So let me ask somebody, read your essay out loud. And then I think with regards to brainstorming, just maybe there is a values exercise on College Essay Guy, which helps you kind of pick out what your 2 or 3 most important values are. Maybe like isolate one important value, find one micro story. Don't find a major story. Don't find like a 10-year timeline story, but find one micro story that supports that most important value that you think is most important, and then write about that micro moment. And don't feel like you need to cover everything in your entire life, and begin there. So I think that's where I might start.
Okay, awesome. And just to kind of briefly add on to that, do you have any quick don'ts for people to consider when they are brainstorming or writing their essays? I know that one typically obvious one is to avoid spelling errors in your essay. I have heard that, admissions officers don't look kindly upon spelling errors more often than not, at least. Do you have any other, quick, like, do not do this, or do you think that it's relatively flexible?
I think it's relatively flexible in context, right? So I feel definitely use the available grammar check tools that are there. Google has it, yeah. So make sure that's, there's no red lines underneath things, or like yeah, like begin there. And then maybe another quick do is try to keep your paragraph shorter. So I actually noticed this is that like sometimes I'll read an essay that's like 2 long paragraphs, and I'm like, the moment I get into 2 long paragraphs, I'm also just kind of like I start doing this. I'm like, oh, so one way to do this is to actually like keep your paragraphs really short, and it could be even max like 3 or 4 sentences, right? Even it actually helps the reader kind of like move on to each point very quickly and very succinctly, and it kind of helps them not fall asleep. Right?
Right. Instead of going like this, every time you see the indent for the new paragraph, Elton's awake. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
ready to read
That's good.
again. Okay, that is that is a good thing to keep in mind. Yeah, so that concludes this episode of Comets Podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening and gained valuable insights from our discussion. We'll also be doing future episodes on approaching different essays, including supplementals and personal insight questions for the UC system. So be on the lookout for those. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment on this week's episode and share it with your friends and family. If there are specific topics you want to hear about or people you want to see featured on our podcast outside of me and Elton for the past few episodes, feel free to let us know in the comment section below, or you can also go to www.applywithcomet.com/podcast. Our contact information will be in the description. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Comet Podcast.